This is From Destruction to Dignity with Janice Pons. Each week, Janice shares her wisdom to enlighten, educate, and advance the culture in America today. Janice Pons is a mother, author, and free thinker, and your host for our podcast this evening. Now let's join your host, Janice Pons.
Greetings, greetings, greetings. Come on in. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Janice Pons. I'm the host on our podcast, From Destruction to Dignity, Clinical Perspective, Spiritual Truths. Listen, we're going to keep plowing through. We've got a good start here. In this new year, we've got a lot going on and a lot is at stake. We're going to keep praying for our nation. There's our beautiful flag behind us. I love the flag. I love to sing the Star Spangled Banner. I love going to Washington, D.C., where the White House is. This is to remind us to pray for our nation and to pray for our president and his family and for the cabinet of the president and their families. We need to be praying for each other. Guys, if you don't know by now, that my focus is on this nation, America, and our children. That's my calling. Children, and thinking about their future. So tonight we're gonna examine some things because there's a lot on the line, and listen, we're gonna talk about calling a spade, and all this ties in with our clinical perspectives because when you call a spade, sometimes you might have to make tough decisions, and so you just got to decide what you're going to do with it. And a lot of things that have gotten presented to me, God even spoke to my heart. He said, what you going to do with that? And I mean, it was some tough stuff. It was even people in some situations I've been in my life where they were literally trying to destroy me. Oh, yeah, they were evil. And God said, what you going to do? What you going to do with that, Janice? And I had to make a decision. And I had to call a spade a spade. So when we call a spade, sometimes we have to make tough decisions. So we're going somewhere, and it's expecting us when we get there. Come and go with me. If we don't understand and grasp and dissect the dynamics that are trying to take this country out, we are going to be sitting somewhere in a corner and crying and wondering why no one ever stood up and called a spade a spade. There are stark examples surrounding us to learn from, but we need to pay attention to details. So many that the enemy of our souls is trying to distract us. Politicians are trying to distract us. They don't want you knowing details. And a lot of these details that have come out, they've come out because of who is the president. You can say what you want to say about him, but he stopped this corrupt stuff that's going on, and the reason why the orchestrated lawfare was targeted to him was so it wouldn't be put on them in terms of what they were actually doing. True story, and I can prove it. We got the receipts. He did this. Look, 30 years ago, he's a felon, all appealed, orchestrated lawfare. Paying attention provokes thought and just may help us to avoid catastrophic mistakes. Guys, they did all that stuff so they could get rid of him. He's the only one that could have afforded all those legal fees. Who else could have afforded that? That man has saved this nation in so many ways because they would have kept going on with their fraudulent money laundering fronts and their scams. All the 5 things I've talked to y'all about them, and I'm gonna keep bringing that. That needs to drive who we vote for in this year. We got to pay attention because when we pay attention, it provokes thoughts. It provokes thought and just may help us to avoid catastrophic mistakes. Thinking in terms of who, what, when, where, how, and why can help us understand. When I see people on social media defending Venezuela in any shape, form, or fashion, I know that they don't get it. Pay close attention to what is specified in terms of what occurred in Venezuela. And people say, well, why are you talking about that? That wouldn't happen here. Pay attention. Listen to me. There was a timeline of what happened in Venezuela, and I want you to think. Get out of your emotions and listen to facts. In 1992, Venezuela became the third richest country in the hemisphere, the hemisphere that they're in. 5 years later, in 1997, they became the second largest purchaser of F-150s. 4 years later, in 2001, they voted for a socialist president, and the focus became income inequality. In other words, no capitalism. No business owners. Income inequality. Okay, that was the focus. 3 years later, in 2004, they had private health care that was completely socialized. That was the goal of Obamacare. Let me keep going. I digress. 3 years after that, in 2007, all higher education became free. 2 years later, in 2009, Venezuela became the place where socialists banned private ownership of guns. 3 years later, in 2012, Bernie Sanders, he was praising their American dream. Oh, Bernie. 2 years later, in 2014, anybody that opposed them, any opposition leaders, were put in prison. All of a sudden, we started seeing on the news that they had food and healthcare shortages that were widespread. Remember how they were talking about how much a roll of toilet paper cost? It was nuts. It was $7, $10 and stuff. But there were just shortages galore. And eventually, their constitution and their elections were suspended. In 2019, unarmed citizens were massacred by their own government. It only took one generation of progressive leadership to plunge that country into civil war. And then we ended up paroling people out of Venezuelan prisons and bringing them here as illegal immigrants. But we called them something else. We paroled them out of Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. That was part of that mess that was going on in 2023 when we had 14 million people to come in here, the Obama-Biden-Harris cabal. The Obama-Biden-Harris cabal had us on this same type of trajectory that I just laid out, guys. My precious fellow Americans, my brothers and sisters, that's the bona fide truth. That may be rough for some of you to grasp, but the receipts clearly lay out that this is what has occurred in our nation. This is exactly what occurred in our nation. There are those in our nation, particularly leadership, and particularly the leadership in the Democratic Party, that has the same plan in their mindset for our country. That's what was going on with all those 5 different major areas that I've been talking about for weeks, where the fraudulent scams were going on. There are those that have a goal for us to be a socialist, Marxist nation with the same trajectory where we have socialized medicine, socialized health care, free education for everybody. These things can't be sustained. It won't work. It hasn't worked. It won't work. You can't have entrepreneurship. They want to get rid of capitalism. The people in the squad went to a foreign land, to that Pan-American Congress, and said that capitalism was a virus. And they are Congress people on Capitol Hill in the United States. And they're over there in a foreign land talking about capitalism as a virus. Let that marinate. What the Somalians have been doing in Minnesota is a stark example of what can happen when people are allowed to run roughshod in our nation. The result is sheer destruction, fraud, corruption, and chaos. What are we supposed to do? Just act like it's not going on? Guys, it is what it is. This is why we need strong leadership with backbone that will call a spade on behalf of America and our citizens. We have to put our foot down with much resolve regarding the agendas that specific people have to take over, manipulate, control, and ruin this nation. And that's exactly what was going on. Remember that example with Venezuela. Their timeline shows exactly what led to them going into the abyss. 1992, they were the third richest country in the hemisphere. 1997, they became the second largest purchaser of F-150s. 2001, they voted for a socialist president. That's what Kamala would have been. That's what Obama was. Voted for, and that's what Biden was. And then you got Trump. He's all about capitalism. He's all about setting it up for our children to be successful. My God. 2001, Venezuela voted for a socialist president, all driven by income inequality. In 2004, they had private health care. It was completely socialized. In 2007, higher education was free. Oh, everything's free. Free health care, free education. Nobody has to pay for anything. 2009, socialists banned private ownership of guns. No Second Amendment rights whatsoever. No constitutional right. That's our Second Amendment constitutional right. And in 2012, what did we have? Old Bernie, he was praising them. And in 2014, anybody that opposed what was going on was in prison. And then all of a sudden, they got shortages of health care. You got to pay these people to provide health care. Well, you ain't got no. It's a setup from the word go. Food shortages, health care shortages, Constitution and elections ended up being suspended. People were taken out by their own government. Guys, there's something called the handwriting being on the wall. Now, consider what Hitler did through his minister of propaganda, Joseph Goebbels. When I was at the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C., and if anybody's ever been there, you know what it's like, how you go up in the elevator and you get off the elevator and you're walking right there in the midst of the exhibits and you're stopped in your tracks about the reality of what went on. And one of the exhibits there that always gets my attention, and I captured that exhibit, and it was called Tools of Persuasion. It's on display in the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. And I want to use that to frame what we're saying tonight. Nazi propaganda drew its power, and this is what that display about Tools of Persuasion at the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. talked about. Nazi propaganda drew its power from the government's absolute control over the flow of information. All news media were censored by Joseph Goebbels' propaganda ministry head. Freedom of speech was ruthlessly suppressed. Beginning on September 1st of 1939, Germans who listened to uncensored information. See, everything was censored. Everything was controlled. But starting in 1939, September 1st, any German who listened to uncensored information on foreign radio broadcasts risked severe punishment. They had endless rallies, parades, speeches, rituals, and sham elections. What for? They were tools of public persuasion. Every year, Germans were expected to participate in hundreds of Nazi events, orchestrated parades, orchestrated events. Such ceremonies reinforce an ideology, protest. But They were gathering. They were forced to gather to be among the faithful and help to weed out the disobedient. If you didn't show up, you were disobedient. Joseph Goebbels also exploited the latest techniques of film and radio. He used movies. He used radio. He used the media to do what? To communicate Nazi achievements. And the government made inexpensive radios called people receivers, and people were glued to them. And they were available in every German household. For what reason? To program them, to control them, to manipulate them. Do we have anything like that going on in America? This is exactly why we need to turn the mainstream media off. I turned it off 6 years ago. I did. God told me, turn it off. They're lying. So why am I going to listen to somebody that's lying? I said, they're lying. That's not true. That is not true what they're saying. So I stopped looking at it. All of them. All. A-double-L. Oh, yeah. We're surrounded with people who are completely brainwashed. It's so easy to spot them. My heart goes out to them as they react and they don't know how to respond, as they've been emotionally manipulated, controlled, and deceived. It's going to heat up this year, guys. Pay attention. It's going to heat up. The Democratic Party has been fully exposed regarding what they've done to us, from all of the facts that have come out regarding the Obama, Biden, Harris cabals, actions related to the stimulus package, Obamacare, COVID-19, USAID NGOs, and illegal immigration. The picture could not be more clear. It's glaring, it's loud, it's very loud. Do you see it? We are just at a point where people have to decide if they're going to call a spade, forsake their allegiance to agendas that want to destroy this nation, and have these agendas that have targeted our children with specificity, with diabolical agendas that we were paying for. We were paying for all this. We were paying for them. As kindergartners to be taught how to pleasure their bodies, and part of the curriculum said, well, there's no such thing as doing it too much in one day. Kindergartners. Man, I worked as a teacher. I worked as a school psychologist. I worked as a licensed clinician with these little ones. I couldn't believe what I was finding out that they had done to our children. And that was under our taxpayer dollars. And parents found out, and they were livid. And when they showed up at these school board meetings, what they do? They started saying, they're domestic terrorists. You see? Guys, that's a lot on the line. Wake up. Call a spade a spade. This takes us into our clinical perspective, making tough decisions. Oh, yeah, we got some tough decisions to make, but the picture couldn't be more clear to me. Tough decisions challenge our emotions because they involve uncertainty, high stakes, and the fear of loss or regret, forcing us to confront difficult feelings like anxiety, sadness, guilt, often pitting our core values against each other and highlighting maybe even a lack of control, which triggers our brain's stress response, and it leads to overthinking or a paralysis as we try to avoid emotional pain. Emotional and psychological factors are involved with tough decisions. There's a fear of negative outcomes a lot of times. What happens then? We dread disappointment or regret or making the wrong choice, leading to avoidance and rumination. Another dynamic is value conflicts. We have values, and so there's a conflict there. Value conflicts may be involved with making tough decisions. Oh yeah, and that led to my political choices. I had values. I had values of faith, values as a believer, values as a Christian, and I was like, why am I voting over here for this? And that doesn't even line up with my faith. Difficult decisions often force a choice between two deeply held values, such as security versus growth. And these kinds of things can produce internal conflict. Some examples of the conflict may be loss and grief. Choosing one path means losing the potential benefits of the others, triggering a sense of loss and sadness even when it's the right decision. Guys, I've lost relationships. I just have. I've wept bitterly, cried, weeping. A lot of us have. We just have. We've been abused. Public smear campaigns. People that we love don't want to be around us. You got to make a decision. I'm going to side with what my spiritual values say, not with you mistreating me, because I'm going to go with that as opposed to you lining up with something else. Now, and I can be around you with your different beliefs, but I'm not going to show up to be abused. And that's what goes on. People actually physically harming people. Or saying, you can't stay at my house. Oh, thanks for letting me know. I won't waste a dime by flying here anymore. If I'm not welcome, you go where you're celebrated, not where you're tolerated. I celebrate people. I don't care what political affiliation you are. I'm going to celebrate you as a human being. But you got people, they can't even be civil. They can't be civil. And that is a game changer. What about anxiety and uncertainty? The unknown future outcome generates anxiety. Oh, yeah, it does, which clouds judgment and can spread to unrelated areas of life. Then you have the conflict of identity and self-worth. We're talking about making tough decisions. We just thinking out loud here. Decisions can feel like a reflection of our character, making us fear that we'll disappoint ourselves or others. Baby, you reach another level of freedom when you're just like, I can't base it on how y'all feel about me. It is what it is. I am going to line up with the principles of God and faith and what's best for this country and what's best for these children, not based upon these lies and these agendas that are being pushed. I'm not doing it. And for a lot of people, it's going to cost them. Oh, yeah, it's going to cost them. Then there's cognitive and situational factors. Sometimes it's just too many options for some people. An abundance of choices can overwhelm our brains. And then people can deal with what we call analysis paralysis. Making any choice just feels inadequate. They just can't handle it. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Well, just settle down and you look, you got to weigh it out. You weigh it out. You use solution-focused problem solving. You talk it out together. Guys, we can get through this stuff. It's about America. This country is not going to last. Look at what happened to Venezuela. Is there any parallel at all? Tough decisions often involve high stakes. When consequences are significant, guys, when we have people that were choosing to abuse us, our taxpayer dollars, with those 5 major platforms that I've talked about, and that was their priority, instead of you eating, instead of you having money for your children, while they walking off like fat rats with their pockets full, living lavish lifestyles. You see how we were abused? President Donald John Trump shut it down. And you know the difference in him and them? He wants us to share in the piece of the pie. That's the difference. People say, well, he a part of it too. No, it's not. He's different than the rest of them. You know why? Because he's doing the Trump accounts. He's setting it up that our children can be prosperous. He's setting it up. We had the opportunity zones. He's setting it. He got people out of prison through First Step Back and second chance hiring. 92% of them were black men. And when the Obama-Biden-Harris cabal got back in there in 2020, 2021, they shut it down. You getting it? Share this with people. Hopefully it opens up their eyes. We got some serious decisions to make here. And is it with Trump? No, he's not just like him. If Trump had his way, all of us would be millionaires. He's setting these kids up to be successful, that when they turn 18 years old, they will have that money in there where they can pay for their education, use that money to be an entrepreneur, or use that money to put a down payment on a house at 18 years old through those Trump accounts. And I was talking to a black pastor. He was like, well, we already. I was talking about, well, you're going to pursue that with your men in your church? Well, we already got a foundation that come on, dude. Come on, sir. You going to leave that money on the table? And then Michael and Susan Dale with Dell Technologies, they came back behind and said, listen, every child, they were just going to do it in Texas, but they said every child that's in the nation, they spread it out to the nation, that's 10 and under, we're going to give them $250 for a savings account. And that's going to go, it's like an IRA. It is building interest. Guys, my Roth IRA right now is yielding 14%. I started that thing late. Just said, my son got it for me. Mom, here's $500 before I go in the military. I just want you to ask. I just pay just a small amount a month. I think I put about $8,000 in there. Right now, that thing is up to $15,000. Just putting the same amount every month. It's yielding 14% in 2025, where the average was 7%. And that's going to be going on for our babies? That's Donald Trump's thinking. And that money will be in there, and by the time they're 18, they can put a down payment on the house, put it on their education, or start a business. And then it just keeps building. By the time they 25, 35, do you see what I'm talking about? And so I've just been involved in this Roth IRA for 7 years. And I've put about $8,000 in it. Wow. Suppose I started early. Guys, do you hear me? Who's pushing this kind of thing? We're talking about tough decisions. We're talking about some high stakes here. But we're talking about investing in our posterity. I've never seen that happen in this nation. I've seen 13 presidents. If Donald Trump had his way, I talk about Trump all the time because ain't nobody done nothing. There has no one done anything like he has. And I was about to say, ain't nobody done it like him. That man's got backbone, and he knows what is at stake. Those people were abusing us, brought COVID poverty to people from foreign lands in here. They didn't care. Brought them in. They got us sick, dropped them off in communities. Whew, Lord God. You talking about demonic? Tough decisions often involve high stakes. When consequences are significant, careers, relationships, health, emotional weight intensifies. You feel it? Oh, yes, I feel it. Then you can have lack of clarity. Not understanding our own values or the full scope of the situation makes emotional processing harder. They're going to be pressing with lies. Their money laundering gravy train is gone. So they're going to be pulling this string and manipulating this and lying with that. Making tough decisions can involve how emotions hijack the decision-making process. Emotional regulation is a struggle. That's a struggle to regulate emotions. The core issue is often not the decision itself, but our struggle to tolerate the uncomfortable emotions that arise. Do you think I didn't have uncomfortable emotions when I was going through a public smear campaign because I decided to be a Christian conservative constitutionalist after being a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat? I was abused like you would not believe. It hurt. I wept bitterly when people that I love abused me. But I had to decide what I was going to do with it. These things can cause you to overthink or procrastinate to avoid. You don't want to feel that distress, but sometimes it's just a part of the gig, man. You just got to go, you know what? I'm going to obey God. I'm going to go with what's going to protect our children. I'm going to go with what's going to protect our country. We're talking about making tough decisions. Sometimes we may get cognitive overload related to tough decisions. Stress and strong emotions can impair our brains, our executive functioning, make complex problem solving difficult. Ultimately, tough decisions challenge us because they enforce us to feel deeply uncomfortable emotions. When I wept bitterly, when I was being abused, I was like, God, this hurts. This hurts. But I had to plow through or cave in. I wasn't going back to hell. Our natural instinct is to avoid that pain. But I went and I said, God, I got to press in. And I sat in a dark room and cried for 2 hours because I saw what was going on. Oh, but it was a part of what made me strong. Even if it prolongs the decision-making process. God, I feel this tonight. It is what it is. This is why we need to have good, healthy relationships. Those who I'm close to, they know me. They know that I'm sorting out things when I openly communicate and say, hey, I need to hear what I'm thinking. When Janice Pond says, I got 5 people. I don't need any more fingers. That's what's on my right hand are the people that I can talk to about anything. And I said, look, I need to hear what I'm thinking. And they said, what's going on? And we dissected it, and we go there. And we have some of the most powerful interactions ever. We process, we metabolize thoughts, feelings, and options. We grow, we advance, we strategize, we thrive, we excel. What have we looked at tonight? I'm fired up. Can you tell? Guys, it's a lot on the line. That's why I'm fired up. And I'm going to get in here and tell the truth. I'm going to talk about who, what, when, where, how, and why. I love these children, and I know the enemy of their soul wants to take them out. Perpetrating that stuff on our kindergartners as they were. I have worked with kids that have been exposed to that kind of thing. And then they get accosted at home, and then they come to school and get traumatized again. Are you kidding me? And I'm not going to speak up, and I know I've been with kids that have been accosted that way. And they come, well, get it at home, and then we get it in school, and I'm paying for it. You better believe I'm going to speak out against that diabolical agenda mess. We're calling a spade a spade. That's what this was about. And our clinical perspective is about tough decisions. Guys, we've been all over the place. They've abused us. They've lied to us. They didn't care. They didn't care that people died. It was part of the gig. But we got to call a spade a spade. And we are charged to awaken people from their sleep regarding simply being aware. Yet we got to listen, guys. We got to talk. We got to talk. We got to talk. We got to talk about who, what, when, where, how, and why. And we got to keep going forward because we're one nation. Yes, we are. One nation under God. Indivisible. The enemy has tried his best to divide us, but we're still standing. We're still here, indivisible, with liberty, justice for all. Look, baby, we want you to come here, but you got to come in the right way. Justice for all, obeying the laws. The law of the land is the Constitution. You got to obey the land. You got to obey the law with the law of the land. And it's been violated in so many ways. Guys, the older I get, I don't care what people think about me. Don't care. I know what's on the line. And I'm a truth broker. And there are a lot of us out here. And we're going to cry loud and spare nothing because there's a lot on the line. As we continue to go from destruction to dignity, clinical perspectives, strategies, skills, tools, talking about it, putting a language to it, processing, metabolizing thoughts, feelings, emotions, going there, supporting each other, loving this nation. We're one nation under God. The enemy of our souls wants to take us out. But as long as there's breath in my body, I will show up and proclaim the truth from the mountaintop. I will see you next week. God bless you guys. I love you. Can you tell? See you next week. Good night.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of From Destruction to Dignity with Janice Pons. Janice's mission is to provoke thought, bring awareness, and point people towards intervention when needed. As a reminder, this show is not therapy, but for educational purposes only. For more information, check out JanicePons.com or follow her on social media.
We are one power, strength is ours, liberty, been set free, education, affirmation, dedication, information, revelation.